Have you ever been pushed so far, so publicly humiliated, that your only way out was to unleash a secret you'd sworn to keep buried forever? Tonight's story is about a moment like that. It's about Lily Monroe, a waitress drowning in debt and anonymity serving champagne to the city's elite. And it's about Adrian Davenport, the ruthless CEO who owned the room the city and thought he could own her too. He made her a cruel, impossible offer in front of everyone, a joke meant to shatter her. He smirked and declared, "If you can sing this opera aria, I'll marry you." He expected tears. He expected her to run. He never expected she would open her mouth and unleash a voice that would not only stun the room, but bring his entire gilded empire to the brink of collapse. The air in The Gilded Lyre was thick with the scent of money and saffron. It was a place where conversations were conducted in hushed, confident tones, punctuated by the delicate clink of Christoph silver against Bernardeau porcelain. For the patrons, it was an oasis of curated perfection. For Lily Monroe, it was a gilded cage where she served bite-sized morsels of a life she could never taste. Her uniform, a starched black dress with a ridiculously small white apron, felt like a costume for a part she never auditioned for the Invisible Woman. She was adept at moving through the labyrinth of tables without being seen, her steps silent, her smile a polite, empty mask. She could top up a glass of 800 Rodald Bordeaux without interrupting a syllable of a conversation about hostile takeovers. She could clear a plate of deconstructed scallops while a society wife dissected a friend's latest facelift. She heard everything and was heard by no one. Tonight was different. The energy in the room was coiled tight, all of it revolving around the man at table 7, the prime real estate overlooking the city lights. Adrian Davenport. His name was a headline, a brand, a weapon. Davenport Holdings was a behemoth that devoured smaller companies for breakfast. He was notoriously brilliant, devastatingly handsome in a severe, sculpted way, and possessed a charisma that was both magnetic and menacing. He was surrounded by his court sycophantic junior partners, laughing too loudly at his jokes, and immaculately dressed women with predatory eyes. Lily's hands were trembling slightly as she approached his table with a fresh bottle of champagne. Her mind wasn't on the bubbles or the temperature. It was on the eviction notice tucked inside her worn copy of La Bohème back in her shoebox apartment. It was on the spiraling medical bills for her father's failing heart, a heart she felt she was failing to save. Every $20 tip was a drop of medicine, every extra shift a prayer. She had once been a different person, a girl whose life was measured in musical bars, not billable hours. A girl who stood on a stage at the conservatory, her voice soaring towards the heavens. But that girl was gone, buried under a mountain of responsibility and one soul-crushing betrayal. "Another bottle, Mr. Davenport," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper. Adrian didn't look at her. He was holding court, telling a story about outmaneuvering a rival in a deal for a biotech firm. His eyes, the color of cold steel, scanned his audience, gauging their reactions. He finished his anecdote, and his guests erupted in appreciative chuckles. Only then did his gaze drift and land on Lily. It wasn't a look of acknowledgement. It was a look of assessment, the way one might inspect a piece of furniture. "Tell me," he said, his voice, a low purr that still managed to cut through the restaurant's ambient hum. "What does a girl like you dream about?" The question was so unexpected, so personal, it broke through her professional veneer. She fumbled with the foil on the champagne bottle. I'm sorry, sir." One of the women at the table, a blonde with a diamond choker that could probably pay off Lily's entire debt, tittered. "Adrian, don't torment the staff." Adrian's smirk widened. He enjoyed this. The power, the control. "No, I'm serious. You stand here all night watching us. You must want something more. A big house, a fast car, or maybe a big break. Lily felt a hot flush of shame creep up her neck. She just wanted to open the bottle and disappear. I just dream of paying my bills, sir. That's all. Her honest, bleak answer seemed to amuse him even more. It was exactly the kind of pathetic response he'd expected. It confirmed his worldview. There were the hunters, and there was the prey. Bills, he mused, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. How terribly pedestrian. He leaned back, his eyes glinting with a cruel spark of inspiration. He had been bored all evening, and now he saw an opportunity for some sport. You know, my fiancée Cassandra is a singer, an opera singer, a very famous one. She tells me it's the most difficult art form in the world. It requires breeding discipline, years of relentless training. He paused, letting his gaze sweep over Lily's slightly frayed cuffs and the weary lines around her eyes. It's not something just anyone can do. It's not for waitresses. The insult was clear, a perfectly aimed dart. The table fell silent, watching the theatre unfold. Lily's jaw tightened. The mention of opera, of a stage, of a life she had been forced to abandon, was like a phantom limb aching in the cold. She simply nodded her face, a blank mask. Yes, sir. The champagne. But Adrian wasn't finished. He raised a hand, stopping her. I have a proposition for you, little waitress. A bit of evening entertainment. His voice was louder now, drawing the attention of the surrounding tables. The low hum of the restaurant began to die down as heads turned. This was Adrian Davenport after all. When he spoke, people listened. He was about to make a spectacle, and no one wanted to miss it. Lily froze the champagne bottle, feeling as heavy as a lead weight in her hand. The air grew still. The clinking of cutlery stopped. She could feel dozens of eyes on her, a collective gaze of condescending curiosity. She was no longer invisible. She was the specimen under the microscope. Adrian Davenport savored the moment, a conductor relishing the silence before the symphony. He stood up, not abruptly, but with a fluid grace that commanded the room. He was tall, and his custom-tailored suit seemed to cast a shadow over the entire table. We're celebrating a victory tonight, he announced, his voice resonating with theatrical authority. And in the spirit of victory, I enjoy a wager, a test of hidden talents. He walked around the table and stopped directly in front of Lily, forcing her to meet his gaze. She could smell his cologne, something expensive and woody, with a hint of something metallic, like cold cash. I'll make you a deal, he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial yet performatively loud whisper. Right here, right now. Forget your bills. Forget this dreary little job. He gestured around the opulent room as if it were a slum. Lily's heart hammered against her ribs. She wanted to run, to scream, to simply cease to exist. But she was trapped, pinned by the weight of everyone's attention. There is an aria, he continued, a cruel smile playing on his lips. My fiancée Cassandra says it is the Mount Everest for a coloratura soprano, a trial by fire that separates the pretenders from the true artists. It's from Mozart's The Magic Flute. A ripple of recognition went through the more cultured members of his audience. Lily knew instantly what he was talking about. Her blood ran cold. Der Hölle Rache kocht in meinem Herzen, Adrian pronounced with smug satisfaction. The Queen of the Night's aria, all fury and vengeance and those impossibly high notes. He looked her up and down again, a glint of pure malice in his eyes. A song of power. Not something for the powerless. He let the name of the aria hang in the air, a sword suspended over her head. He then delivered the final crushing blow. If you, he said, pointing a finger at her chest, can sing that opera aria right now, I'll marry you. A wave of shocked gasps and nervous laughter filled the room. The offer was absurd. It was preposterous. It was a joke of the highest, cruelest order. It wasn't a proposal. It was a public execution. He wasn't offering marriage. He was offering humiliation framed as a fairy tale. He was daring the little grey mouse to prove she was secretly a lion, knowing she would squeak and scurry away. His friends roared with laughter. They saw it for what it was, the ultimate power play. The billionaire toying with the help. Lily stood completely still. Her face had gone pale, but her eyes for the first time that night held something other than exhaustion. A flicker of fire. He had no idea what he had just done. He thought he was mocking her profession, her social status. But he had inadvertently kicked down the door to the one room in her soul she kept locked and sacred. The room where Lily the conservatory prodigy still lived, breathed and dreamed. The manager, a perpetually flustered man named Mr. Dubois, began scurrying over his face, ashen. "Mr. Davenport, please, I must insist. This is highly irregular." Adrian waved him away with a flick of his wrist. "Relax, Dubois. She's not going to sing. She's going to cry. I'll give her $100 tip for her troubles, and we'll all have a good story to tell. It's fine." He turned back to Lily, his smirk cemented in place. "Well, what's it to be? The stage is yours." Lily's mind was a maelstrom. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, to quit on the spot and run out into the night. But then she saw it again. The eviction notice, her father's pale, weary face in the hospital bed, the mountain of bills. And she heard it, the condescending laughter of the people who saw her as less than human, as background scenery in their perfect lives. And then she remembered the betrayal. The memory, sharp and poisonous, lanced through her. A fellow student at the conservatory, a rival with a cruel smile and a well-connected family. A lost portfolio for a crucial audition. A whispered lie that ruined her reputation. The name of that rival was Cassandra. Cassandra Dubois, Adrian Davenport's fiancée. It all clicked into place. This wasn't just a random act of cruelty. This was the universe presenting her with a moment of impossible, terrifying alignment. She looked at Adrian Davenport, really looked at him for the first time. The mask was gone. In its place was a quiet, cold fury that was far more potent than his performative arrogance. She slowly, deliberately placed the champagne bottle on a nearby serving stand. She untied the strings of her small white apron and folded it, placing it next to the bottle. Her movements were calm and precise. The laughter in the room quieted, replaced by a confused murmur. What was she doing? She straightened her back. The timid, stooped posture of the waitress vanished, replaced by the poised, upright stance of a performer. She took a deep, centering breath, just as her old vocal coach, Professor Alcott, had taught her. She wasn't Lily the waitress anymore. She met Adrian's smug gaze, and for the first time, he saw a flicker of something in her eyes he hadn't anticipated. Not fear, not tears. Defiance. "You'll want to stand back, sir," she said, her voice clear and steady, devoid of its earlier deference. "The Queen of the Night takes up a lot of space." A stunned silence descended upon the gilded lyre. It was so absolute that the distant sound of a city siren seemed to be inside the room. Adrian Davenport's smirk faltered, replaced by a flicker of disbelief. This was not part of the script. The mouse wasn't squeaking. It was staring him down. Lily closed her eyes for a single second, shutting out the sea of shocked faces. She wasn't in a restaurant. She was backstage at the conservatory recital hall, the scent of rosin and old velvet in the air. She could feel the familiar buzz of stage fright and adrenaline. She drew another breath, not a shallow, anxious gasp, but a deep, diaphragmatic intake that filled her from the soles of her feet. This was her air, her fuel. When she opened her eyes, she was transformed. Her gaze was no longer on Adrian, but on a point far beyond him, a spot on the far wall, as if seeing an audience in a darkened concert hall. Her hands, which had trembled holding the champagne, were now loosely clasped at her waist, a picture of professional calm. Without a pitch pipe, without accompaniment, she found the starting note in the perfect silent sanctuary of her mind. The first notes erupted from her sharp, percussive, and shockingly powerful. Der Hölle Rache kocht in meinem Herzen, hell's vengeance boils in my heart. The German was flawless, the diction crisp and venomous. The sound was not the timid murmur of a waitress. It was a physical force that struck the room like a thunderclap. People physically jolted in their seats. A waiter dropping a fork sounded like a gunshot in the ensuing silence. Adrian took an involuntary step back. His face was a mask of utter shock. This was not possible. Lily's voice climbed a torrent of pure weaponized sound. She navigated the brutally difficult staccato runs with terrifying precision, each note a perfectly formed diamond-hard projectile. This wasn't just singing, it was storytelling. In her voice, the room heard the fury of a betrayed queen, the pain of a scorned mother, the chilling promise of revenge. Her body was alive with the music. A subtle lift of her chin, a clenching of her fist. She was channeling a primal rage that felt terrifyingly real. The patrons who had been expecting a laughable, drunken karaoke attempt were utterly captivated. Their forks were suspended over their plates of truffle risotto. Conversations were forgotten. All that existed was this woman in a plain black dress and her incandescent voice. Then came the legendary passage, the series of high F6 that have been the downfall of countless professional sopranos. It was the Everest that Adrian had so mockingly referenced. As the preceding musical phrase built, a collective breath was held across the room. It was a moment of sheer heart-stopping suspense. Lily's posture didn't change. She didn't strain. She simply opened her mouth, and the notes shot out of her effortless, clear and bright as laser beams. F6. Again. Again. And again. They were not shrieks. They were musical tones of astounding purity and power that seemed to vibrate in the very crystal of the chandeliers, making them hum with sympathetic resonance. In that moment, she wasn't just singing the Queen of the Night's aria. She was the Queen of the Night, and her vengeance was aimed squarely at the man standing dumbfounded before her, and at the gilded cage he inhabited. The aria ends with a final, furious declaration. Hört Rachegötter, hört der Mutter Schwur, hear gods of revenge, hear a mother's oath. She delivered the final line, not as a plea, but as a command, her voice ringing with a chilling finality, before cutting off into absolute, profound silence. The silence lasted for 3, maybe 4 full seconds. It was a deafening void filled with the echo of what they had just witnessed. The illusion of the restaurant was shattered. This wasn't a place of quiet, sophisticated dining anymore. It was a holy space where a miracle or a reckoning had just occurred. The spell was broken by a single person. At a corner table sat an older gentleman whom Lily had barely noticed. He was impeccably dressed, but unassuming. His name was Gabriel Chen, a notoriously private philanthropist and a board member of the Metropolitan Opera. He slowly rose to his feet and began to applaud. It wasn't the polite clapping of a restaurant patron. It was the thunderous, appreciative applause of a seasoned connoisseur who had just witnessed greatness. His action opened the floodgates. The room erupted. It was a cacophony of applause, shouts of "Brava!" and the scraping of chairs as people leapt to their feet. The kitchen staff peeked out from the swinging doors, their faces filled with awe. Dubois, the manager, stood frozen, his mouth agape. Lily stood breathing not heavily, but with the controlled rhythm of an athlete after a triumph. The adrenaline coursed through her, a feeling she had forgotten, a feeling she thought she would never experience again. She had done it. She had faced down the dragon and incinerated him with a song. She finally allowed her gaze to fall on Adrian Davenport. The smirk was gone. The arrogance had vanished. His face was pale, his eyes wide, with a cocktail of emotions she couldn't quite decipher: shock, fury, confusion, and something else. Something that looked unnervingly like fear. He had made an impossible offer a joke, and she had called his bluff in the most spectacular way imaginable. The entire room was looking at him, now waiting. The billionaire had made a public proclamation. "If you can sing this opera aria, I'll marry you." The smirk was on their faces now. The trap he had set for her had sprung shut, but he was the one caught in its jaws. The applause slowly subsided, but the thick electric tension remained. Every eye in the Gilded Lyre was now fixed on Adrian Davenport. The hunter had become the spectacle. His public joke had become his public predicament. The silence stretched, becoming more awkward and incriminating with every passing second. Adrian's mind, usually a high-speed processor of market data and strategic maneuvers, was short-circuiting. He opened his mouth, then closed it. His usual arsenal of witty dismissals and powerful put-downs was useless. How could he possibly spin this? He finally found his voice, forcing a tight, unnatural laugh. Well, quite the party trick, he said, his voice strained. He tried to reclaim his power, turning to his guests. "It seems we've found a little songbird. A round of applause for... What was your name again?" The attempt to diminish her, to reduce her monumental performance to a party trick and feign ignorance of her name, fell flat. It sounded petty and weak. The room wasn't laughing with him anymore. They were judging him. They had all heard the wager. Lily looked at him, her newfound composure unshaken. She didn't need to say a word. Her silence was more powerful than any retort. Adrian cleared his throat, feeling the pressure mount. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a thick platinum money clip, and peeled off several $100 bills. He held them out to her. A truly impressive performance. "For your troubles." This was his escape hatch. Treat it as a transaction, a paid performance. Reduce her art back down to a service rendered by the help. Lily looked at the money in his hand, then back at his face. The entire room watched. Taking the money would release him from his absurd promise. It would restore the natural order of things, the rich man paying the poor girl for her entertainment. But Lily wasn't the same person she was 10 minutes ago. The Queen of the Night was still echoing in her veins. She gave a small, almost imperceptible shake of her head. "No, thank you, Mr. Davenport," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "My performance wasn't for sale. And I believe the terms of your offer were quite specific." A collective, barely audible gasp went through the room. She had thrown his words right back in his face. She wasn't letting him off the hook. With a final unwavering look at the utterly flabbergasted CEO, Lily turned. She walked not towards the kitchens, but towards the small staff locker room. Her shift was over. Her time at the Gilded Lyre was over. She was done. As she walked away, the room erupted in hushed, frantic whispers. Adrian Davenport was left standing alone in the center of the room, holding a fan of cash, his face a thunderous mask of public humiliation. Lily gathered her few belongings from her locker with shaking hands. The adrenaline was beginning to fade, replaced by a terrifying uncertainty. What had she just done? She had no job. She had publicly antagonized one of the most powerful men in the city. Her problems, the eviction, the bills were still there, now magnified by unemployment. A wave of panic washed over her. Just as she was about to slip out the service exit into the cold anonymity of the night, a calm voice stopped her. Ms. Munro. She turned to see the older gentleman who had started the applause, Gabriel Chen. He was standing by the exit, his expression kind and deeply serious. He was holding her folded apron. "I believe you left this," he said, offering it to her. "Thank you," she whispered, taking it. "But I won't be needing it anymore." "I should think not," Gabriel said with a gentle smile. "A voice like that does not belong to an apron. It belongs to the world." Lily looked at him confused. I don't understand." "My name is Gabriel Chen," he said, extending a hand. "I'm on the board of the Metropolitan Opera, and what I heard tonight, Ms. Munro, that was not a party trick. That was a revelation." Lily's heart skipped a beat. The Met. It was the hallowed ground she and her fellow students had whispered about in reverent tones. "I know who you are, Lily," he continued softly. "I was a patron of the Conservatory's Rising Stars program. I remember you. You were the one everyone was talking about 5 years ago. The one with the voice of a generation. And then you just disappeared." Tears pricked Lily's eyes. To be remembered. To be seen for who she was, not for the uniform she wore. It was a balm on a wound she thought would never heal. "Things happened," she managed to say, her voice thick with emotion. "I can imagine," Gabriel said, his eyes full of empathy. "But talent like yours is a crime to keep hidden. Adrian Davenport is a brutish man who uses art as a status symbol. He wouldn't know a true artist if she served him his champagne. What he did tonight was despicable." He reached into his own coat pocket and pulled out a simple, elegant business card. "This is my personal number," he said, pressing it into her hand. "What you did in there was more than just sing an aria. It was an act of profound courage. But courage doesn't pay the bills. When you're ready, I want you to call me. I want to hear your story, and I want to arrange a proper audition for you. Not in a restaurant for the amusement of fools, but on a real stage for people who understand." Lily stared at the card, at the embossed name, at the impossible offer of a second chance. It felt heavier and more valuable than all the money in Adrian Davenport's platinum clip. "Thank you," she stammered, overwhelmed. "Don't thank me," Gabriel said. "Thank your gift. Now go. Get some rest. The Queen of the Night has had a very big evening." He gave her a respectful nod and walked away, leaving Lily standing in the dim light of the service alley, holding a business card that felt like a key, and a future that was for the first time in years terrifyingly, brilliantly wide open. 3 days passed in a blur of anxiety and adrenaline. Lily survived on cheap takeout, pacing her small apartment, the business card of Gabriel Chen sitting on her nightstand like a holy relic. She replayed the scene at the Gilded Lyre 1,000 times in her mind. The initial terror, the surge of power, Adrian's stunned face, the roar of applause. It felt like a dream. But the eviction notice on her counter was a stark reminder of her reality. Her phone had been buzzing with notifications. A few of the patrons, likely those with a flair for drama, had discreetly filmed the performance. The clip, grainy and shot from a shaky hand, had gone viral. "CEO's cruel bet backfires," read one headline. "Mystery waitress stuns elite restaurant with opera performance," read another. The story was irresistible, a David and Goliath tale for the digital age. They didn't know her name, but the liar soprano was becoming a minor internet sensation. The virality was a double-edged sword. It meant Adrian Davenport's humiliation was public and spreading. A man like that would not take such a thing lying down. Fear was a cold knot in her stomach. What if he came after her? What if he used his immense power to blacklist her, to make her life even more impossible? Finally gathering every ounce of courage she possessed, she dialed the number on the card. Chen, a calm voice, answered on the first ring. "Mr. Chen, this is Lily Monroe." "Lily, I've been expecting your call," he said, his voice warm and reassuring. "I've been following the news. It seems you've made quite an impression." "I'm not sure that's a good thing," she confessed, her voice trembling slightly. "For a man like Davenport, no. For a true artist, all publicity is a prelude." "Can you meet me this afternoon?" "My office. Let's talk." Gabriel Chen's office was nothing like the ostentatious world of Adrian Davenport. It was a quiet, book-lined suite in a historic building overlooking a park. The air smelled of old paper and tea. It was a sanctuary of culture, not commerce. He poured her a cup of jasmine tea, and for the first time, Lily told her story. She spoke of her passion for music, her years of dedication, and the scholarship to the conservatory that was meant to be her ticket to the stars. And then she spoke of the part she had kept buried for 5 long years. There was a competition, she began, her voice low. The final showcase. The winner would get a sponsorship management and a debut role with a major European opera company. It was everything. Gabriel listened intently, his expression unreadable but deeply focused. "I was a finalist. So was another student, Cassandra Dubois." At the mention of the name, Gabriel's eyebrows raised slightly, but he remained silent, letting her continue. Cassandra was talented, but she was more ambitious than she was gifted. Her family was wealthy, powerful. They were major donors to the conservatory. She always had the best coaches, the best opportunities. But I was better. My voice was stronger. My range was wider. And everyone knew it. The professors, the other students, and Cassandra. She took a shaky sip of tea. The night before the final performance, my portfolio was stolen from my locker. My sheet music, my performance notes, my letters of recommendation. Everything. I reported it, but there was no proof. They called it professional jealousy, a prank. But the worst part, a rumor started circulating that I had been sabotaging other singers, that I had faked the theft myself to gain sympathy. Cassandra was the one who started it. I heard her myself whispering to a judge in the hallway. The memory was still raw, a fresh wound. I was a scholarship kid from a no-name town. She was a Dubois. They believed her. I was unofficially shunned. The judges looked at me with suspicion. My confidence was shattered. I went on stage that night and I choked. My voice cracked on the easiest passage. It was a disaster. She couldn't hold back the tears now. Cassandra won. She got the sponsorship, the debut, everything. A few weeks later, my father had his first heart attack. The medical bills started piling up. With my reputation at the conservatory ruined and my spirit broken, I dropped out. I had to get a job, any job. I started waitressing, and I haven't sung a single note of opera since, until the other night. The story hung in the air between them, heavy and tragic. Gabriel was silent for a long moment, his fingers steepled. "Cassandra Dubois," he said, his voice laced with a new, hard edge. "She is now engaged to Adrian Davenport. Her career, while successful, has always been propped up by his money and influence. He bought a controlling interest in a small Italian opera house just to secure her leading roles. Lily stared at him, the final piece of the puzzle clicking into place. So, when he challenged me, it wasn't random. Gabriel finished, his eyes dark with understanding. I'm willing to bet he knew exactly who you were. Perhaps Cassandra has mentioned her old conservatory rival. Perhaps he saw your name on the staff roster and decided to perform a cruel bit of theatre for his fiancée's benefit, to prove that her vanquished foe was now a lowly waitress, to humiliate you so completely that you would never dream of being a threat again. The revelation was nauseating. It wasn't just a rich man's whim. It was a targeted, premeditated act of cruelty. He hadn't just been making a joke. He had been trying to bury her for good. He thought you would crumble, Gabriel said, his voice low and intense. But you didn't. You did the one thing they never expected. You fought back with the very gift they tried to take from you. You reminded them who you are. He leaned forward, his demeanor shifting from sympathetic listener to strategist. This changes things, Lily. This is no longer just about your talent. It's about justice. Davenport and Dubois built a career on a lie on your stolen future, and you have just publicly exposed the flaw in their entire narrative. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the park. They will not let this go. They will try to silence you, to buy you, or to crush you. We need to be ready. The audition I mentioned, I think we need to accelerate the timeline, and I think we need to make sure the right people are there to witness it. Lily's fear was still there, a cold current beneath the surface, but now it was mixed with something else, a hot, righteous anger, a desire not for revenge, but for reclamation. They had taken her past. She would not let them take her future. What do I have to do? She asked, her voice steady and clear. Gabriel turned from the window, a small, determined smile on his face. You, Lily Munro, are going to prepare for war. And you are going to win it with an aria. The viral video of the liar soprano was no longer a fleeting curiosity. It was a PR nightmare for Adrian Davenport. The narrative he couldn't control was that of a cruel billionaire who publicly humiliated a working-class woman only to have it backfire spectacularly. Commentators and social media were having a field day. Worse for him was the praise being heaped on Lily's voice. Experts were analyzing the clip, marveling at her technique and power. The question everyone was asking was not just, who is she, but why is someone with that much talent waiting tables? The pressure was mounting, and it was reaching the one person Adrian could not afford to displease Cassandra Dubois. In their sterile, white penthouse apartment overlooking the city, the air was frigid. Cassandra, her face a mask of rage, threw a tablet onto a marble coffee table. The screen showed an article from a major music blog headlined, "Is the Liar Soprano the Lost Voice of a Generation?" A lost voice? She shrieked her voice, a shrill, ugly thing, nothing like the carefully produced sound on her recordings. She's a nobody, a failure who couldn't handle the pressure. How could you let this happen, Adrian? I was handling it. Adrian snapped, loosening a tie that suddenly felt too tight. It was a joke that went sideways. A joke. You publicly offered to marry my old rival, the one I told you about. You made her a romantic hero and yourself a villain. Now people are digging. They're asking questions about the conservatory, about the showcase. He saw the genuine panic in her eyes and knew this was more than just professional jealousy. Their shared success was built on the foundation of Lily's failure. If that foundation cracked, everything could crumble. His phone rang. It was his head of security. Sir, we've located her. A small apartment in the West Village. She's been meeting with Gabriel Chen. Adrian's blood ran cold. Chen. Of course. his quiet, cultured rival who sat on every important board in the city. Chen didn't play the game with brute force like Adrian. He played it with influence and integrity, which made him infinitely more dangerous. "He's getting her an audition, isn't he?" Adrian said, already knowing the answer. "It appears so, sir. At the Grand Leonora Opera House, a private showcase for the artistic director, Maestro Valeriano, and the board. Next week." Adrian hung up. He had to get to Lily first. Before Chen could solidify her comeback, he had to regain control of the narrative. Lily was practicing in her apartment, running scales for the first time in years. Her voice felt rusty, but powerful, a magnificent engine waking from a long slumber. There was a sharp, authoritative knock on the door. Her heart leapt into her throat. She wasn't expecting anyone. She opened the door a crack, and her blood froze. Adrian Davenport stood in the drab hallway of her building, looking utterly out of place in his $1,000 suit. "Miss Monroe," he said, his voice smooth and devoid of its earlier mockery. "May I have a word against her better judgment?" She let him in. He surveyed her tiny, cluttered apartment with a look of barely concealed distaste. A stack of overdue bills sat on her small kitchen table. "Let's dispense with the pleasantries," he began, turning to face her. "You've made your point. You have a surprisingly adequate voice. You embarrassed me." "Congratulations." Lily crossed her arms, unintimidated. "I wasn't trying to embarrass you. I was just giving you what you asked for." A muscle twitched in his jaw. "I am here to make you a business proposition. I am prepared to offer you a sum of $250,000. In exchange, you will sign a non-disclosure agreement stating that the events at the restaurant were a pre-arranged publicity stunt we orchestrated together. You will then disappear from public life. The money should be more than enough to handle your domestic issues." He glanced meaningfully at the pile of bills. It was a classic Davenport move. He couldn't win the fight, so he was trying to buy the outcome. 5 years ago, $250,000 would have seemed like all the money in the world. It would have saved her father, her future, everything. But now it felt like an insult. "And what if I say no?" Lily asked, her voice steady. Adrian's polished demeanor cracked. "Don't be a fool. You think Gabriel Chen is your savior. He'll parade you around as his pet project. And when the novelty wears off, you'll be right back where you started. I am offering you a clean slate. Financial security. Take it." "It's not about the money, Adrian," she said, using his first name for the first time. The sound of it on her lips seemed to startle him. "It's about the truth. It's about what you and Cassandra did to me 5 years ago." The direct hit landed. All pretense of a business negotiation vanished. His face darkened with fury. "You know nothing. I know everything," Lily shot back, her voice rising with righteous anger. "I know she stole my portfolio. I know she spread lies about me. I know she built her entire career on my ruin. And I suspect that when you saw my name on the employee list at your fancy restaurant, you decided to crush what little I had left just to be safe. Just to make sure the ghost of your fiancé's past stayed buried." Adrian was speechless. She had laid the entire sordid truth bare. "This isn't about a comeback for me," Lily continued, stepping closer, her eyes blazing. "It's about reclamation. You don't get to buy my silence. You don't get to own my story. And you don't get to decide my future. Not anymore." She walked to the door and opened it. "The answer is no. Your offer is rejected. Now get out of my home." For the second time in a week, Adrian Davenport stood utterly defeated by this woman he had so fatally underestimated. He looked at her, at the fire in her eyes, and he saw not a waitress, not a victim, but a formidable opponent. As he walked out, He knew his attempt to contain the problem had just turned a small fire into an inferno. The battle wouldn't be won with money or threats. It would be fought on a stage, and he had a terrifying feeling that he and Cassandra were about to be on the losing side. The day of the audition was a canvas of muted grey, the sky over the city heavy with unwept rain. But inside the hallowed walls of the Grand Leonora Opera House, the atmosphere was charged with a palpable high-stakes energy. This was not a public spectacle. The vast, velvet-draped hall was mostly empty, which somehow made the occasion feel infinitely more significant. The small curated audience was a constellation of power. Maestro Valeriano, the legendary and notoriously difficult artistic director, sat in the center of the stalls like a seated king. The entire board of directors, including a serene-looking Gabriel Chen, flanked him, and scattered throughout the front rows were the city's most influential music critics, their pens poised like surgical instruments, personally invited by Gabriel to witness what he promised would be a historic event. In a move of audacious psychological theatre, Gabriel had also extended a formal invitation to Adrian Davenport and Cassandra Dubois. They started this narrative, he had told a stunned Lily. It is only fitting they have a front row seat to witness its true conclusion. This is their stage, as much as it is yours. Lily stood in the cavernous darkness of the wings, the scent of aged wood dust, and something metallic, the ghost of countless high notes, filling her lungs. Her heart was a frantic drum against her ribs, a wild bird trapped in a cage of bone. She was dressed in a simple, elegant midnight blue dress, a gift from Gabriel. It felt like a costume for a person she wasn't sure she was ready to be. The ghost of her past failure was a cold presence at her side, whispering venomous reminders of her conservatory choke, of the shattered confidence of the long, silent years. What if I choke again? What if they were all right about me? What if I am just a waitress with a party trick? A calm presence joined her in the shadows. It was Gabriel. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He simply stood beside her, looking out at the sliver of the stage visible to them. "They are all out there," he said, his voice a low murmur. Adrian is sitting ramrod straight, trying to project an aura of boredom, but he hasn't blinked in a full minute. Cassandra is beside him, affecting an air of detached amusement, but she can't stop twisting the massive diamond on her finger. They are afraid, Lily. Not of you, but of the truth you represent. He turned to face her, his kind eyes searching hers. "I know you are terrified. You have every right to be. But I want you to reframe this moment. This is not an audition you have to win. You have nothing to prove to them. Think of this as an exorcism. You are walking onto that stage to cast out the ghosts of the last 5 years. You are not here to ask for a job. You are here to take back your life." He gave her shoulder a gentle, reassuring squeeze. "Don't sing for them. Sing for the girl who first fell in love with an aria. Sing for your father, whose heart beats stronger with every note you reclaim. Sing for yourself." His words settled her frantic heart. He was right. This wasn't about them. This was about her. The stage manager gave her a nearly imperceptible nod. It was time. Taking a deep, centering breath, Lily took a step forward. The walk from the cramped darkness of the wings into the stark, lonely circle of the ghost lamp felt like a journey across a lifetime. The muffled sounds of the theatre, a cough, the rustle of a program fell away, replaced by the thudding of her own pulse. The wooden floorboards of the historic stage seemed to hum with the energy of all the great artists who had stood there before her. She was a trespasser, an imposter. No, she was home. She came to a stop at the center of the stage, the single light illuminating her, leaving the rest of the great hall in an expectant darkness. She let her eyes adjust. And she saw them. The silhouettes. Her gaze swept past the critics, past the board members, and landed on the front row, on Adrian and Cassandra. Adrian's face was a mask of rigid control, his handsome features tight with a tension that betrayed his feigned indifference. Cassandra was a portrait of brittle elegance, her smile a painted slash of red. As Lily's eyes met hers, the smile faltered. Lily saw past the designer clothes and the perfect hair, and for the first time, she saw Cassandra for what she was. A terrified usurper, forever glancing over her shoulder, waiting for the rightful queen to return. In that moment, the last vestiges of fear and intimidation Lily felt towards them dissolved, replaced by a profound, almost pitying clarity. From the darkness, Maestro Valeriano's voice emerged, a gravelly baritone with a thick Italian accent that could make or break careers with a single word. Miss Munro, welcome. We have all heard the rumors. We have seen the video. They say you sing a formidable queen of the night, a voice of fire and vengeance. Is that what you will offer us today? The question hung in the air. This was her moment. She could give them the spectacle they expected. She could unleash Der Hölle Rache. Once more, a musical cannon aimed directly at the front row. It would be dramatic. It would be satisfying. It would be revenge. But revenge was their language. It was the currency of their cruel, transactional world. She would not trade in it. She would rise above it. No, maestro, she replied, her voice clear and calm, ringing with surprising warmth in the hall's perfect acoustics. The Queen of the Night was for a specific moment. Today I am someone else. Today I would like to sing Visidate from Puccini's Tosca. A quiet but potent murmur rippled through the audience. The critics exchanged loaded glances, from the fiery fury of Mozart to the heartbreaking plea of Puccini, from a queen's command for vengeance to a devoted artist's prayer of despair. It was an unexpected, audacious, and deeply personal choice. Visidate translates to, I lived for art. It is the lament of the singer Floria Tosca, a woman who has dedicated her life to beauty and faith, only to be cornered by a cruel, powerful man who seeks to destroy her. It was in every way Lily's own story. The accompanist, a master of his craft, seemed to understand instantly. He began the gentle, sorrowful piano introduction. Lily closed her eyes, shutting out the world. She drew a breath, not of air, but of memory. The voice that emerged was not the weapon she had wielded in the restaurant. It was a wound opened for all to see. The opening notes were tinged with a delicate, fragile tremor, not of technical weakness, but of profound, emotional honesty. As she sang the opening lines, Visi d'arte, visi d'amore, I lived for art. I lived for love. She wasn't performing. She was testifying. She poured into the melody the memory of every sacrifice, every lonely hour of practice, every dream she had whispered into the dark. Her voice gained strength, swelling with a rich golden warmth as she sang of giving her song to the stars, to heaven, making the world a more beautiful place. This was her defense, her evidence, her life's work. Then she arrived at the aria's agonizing heart, the desperate question to God, perché Signor, perché me ne rimuneri così? Why, oh why, Lord? Why do you reward me thus? Her voice swelled with 5 years of compressed pain, the humiliation of the sabotage, the agony of her father's illness, the crushing weight of every bill, the degradation of every condescending glance she endured as a waitress. It was a cry so pure, so authentic, it seemed to tear a hole in the fabric of the hall. Hot, silent tears streamed down her face, but her voice miraculously did not break. It was a thing of impossible beautiful strength, a testament not to her suffering, but to her survival. She wasn't a queen commanding revenge. She was a human being, an artist, baring her soul and asking the universe why. When the final, exquisitely controlled note faded into a whisper, the silence that followed was absolute. It was a holy silence, more profound than any applause. It was a shared space of awe and raw emotion. No one moved, no one breathed. They had not just heard an aria, they had been granted entry into a soul. From the center of the stalls, a single choked sob could be heard. Maestro Valeriano, a man known for his iron composure, was slowly, unashamedly wiping a tear from his cheek. He rose to his feet, his formidable presence filling the hall. "Bravissima," he whispered, his voice thick with an emotion no one had ever heard from him before. His single word was the signal. The dam broke. The entire room, the bored, the stone-faced critics, surged to their feet. The sound that erupted was not mere applause. It was a roar, a wave of validation and profound respect that washed over Lily on the stage. It was the sound of a world making amends. Lily stood weeping in the warm bath of the spotlight, tears of grief and joy and catharsis mingling together. She had done it. She had faced her ghosts and sung them to peace. After a long moment, she opened her eyes and looked towards the front row. Gabriel was on his feet, his face beaming his applause, the loudest of all. And beside him, where Adrian and Cassandra had been sitting, were 2 empty velvet seats. They were gone. They had not been able to withstand the incandescent truth of her art. Confronted with a soul so pure and a talent so undeniable, their own brittle, carefully constructed lies had shattered. They hadn't been driven out by her fury. They had simply evaporated in the face of her grace, fleeing into the darkness because they could not bear the light. Lily looked at the empty chairs and she felt no triumph, no vengeful glee, only a quiet, final release. They had not been defeated. They had simply been rendered irrelevant. The stage and the rest of her life was finally entirely hers. And so Lily Monroe's journey wasn't about winning a billionaire's cruel wager. It was never about the marriage proposal. It was about reclaiming a life and a voice that was stolen from her. She didn't need Adrian Davenport's name or his money. She had her own and she made it legendary. Her story became a testament to the fact that true power isn't about wealth or status, but about the unbreakable resilience of the human spirit and the transcendent power of art. She reminds us that even when you're invisible, broke and backed into a corner, the one thing no one can ever take from you is your own innate gift. And sometimes, unleashing that gift is the most powerful victory of all. What did you think of Lily's incredible story of reclamation? Do you believe in second chances? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you, please hit that like button, share it with someone who needs a reminder of their own strength, and don't forget to subscribe for more true-life dramatic stories that will stay with you long after you've finished listening. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.